Untold exploits of the Fabulous Moolah are some of the deepest and most disturbing stories in the entire wrestling world. We're not just talking about her taking a big cut of other wrestlers' pay, she also controlled their bookings, careers, and, in some cases, their lives. And let's not forget the serious allegations of abuse and sexual exploitation. So let's dig in and uncover the darker side of Moolah's legacy. Some of the most serious and disturbing stories about the Fabulous Moolah don't come from her time in the ring. They come from the people who were closest to her. Over the years, several former trainees have come forward with shocking claims. Some say that Moolah drugged them, others say she allowed or even arranged for them to be sexually assaulted. But the most damaging allegations, they go even further. According to multiple wrestlers who trained under her, Moolah didn't just teach them how to wrestle, she controlled almost every part of their lives. There are claims that she actually pimped out some of the women she trained, sending them to promoters or powerful people in the wrestling business in exchange for bookings or favors. These weren't just rumors whispered backstage. These were stories told by women who felt used, trapped, and powerless under her rule. And the control didn't stop there. Moolah also took a big chunk of her wrestlers' pay. Some former talents said she would take 25% or even more from what they earned at shows. Technically, it was written into their contracts. But when you think about the fact that she was the gatekeeper for women's wrestling in North America for decades, it starts to feel a lot less like business and a lot more like exploitation. You see, for many years, if you were a woman and wanted to make it in wrestling, you pretty much had to go through Moolah. She ran the show. If you weren't under her control, getting booked was nearly impossible. And if you questioned her or tried to go around her, there were stories of blacklisting, of being frozen out, of never getting another opportunity again. She held the keys to the kingdom, and she made sure everyone knew it. Now that we've touched on the darker and more controversial parts of Moolah's story, let's rewind and take a look at how her wrestling career actually began and how she built the kind of power that allowed her to dominate women's wrestling for decades. Moolah, real name Mary Lillian Ellison, started her journey in the world of wrestling with Billy Wolfe, who was the top women's wrestling promoter at the time. Wolfe was married to Mildred Berg, one of the most famous female wrestlers of that era. Working with Wolfe gave Moolah access to the wrestling scene, and she got the chance to compete against some major names like Mae Young, Cecilia Blevins, and even Berg herself. But things behind the scenes weren't as clean-cut. Billy Wolfe had a bad reputation for telling women wrestlers that they should get involved with him or other promoters in a romantic or sexual way to get more bookings. That was just the way things were done, according to him. Moolah, however, didn't go along with that. She refused to play by that rule, which definitely caused some friction. By the early 1950s, Moolah had taken on a new role in wrestling, valet. She started working as the manager and ringside companion for Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. At the time, women weren't always taken seriously as wrestlers, so being a valet was one way to get noticed. Moolah added glamour to Rogers' act, walking him to the ring, helping him cheat behind the referee's back, and wowing crowds with her presence. But even that relationship didn't last. Moolah said she ended things with Rogers because he kept pressuring her into starting a romantic relationship. When she walked away from that, she became a valet for another wrestler, Elephant Boy, also known as Tony Olivas. This pairing caused a different kind of trouble. Olivas was a dark-skinned Mexican wrestler, and during their entrance routine, Moolah, who was white, would kiss him on the cheek. That simple act caused outrage in certain parts of the U.S., especially in the deeply segregated South. At one show in Oklahoma City, a man actually tried to stab Moolah with a knife just because he thought she kissed a black man. After her time with Pfeffer's promotion came to an end, Moolah headed to the Northeast, where she began working with Boston-based promoters Tony Santos and Paul Bowser. That move eventually brought her into contact with Vince McMahon, Sr., the man behind Capital Wrestling Corporation, which later evolved into the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. In 1955, she officially signed with McMahon's company. Just a year later, on September 18, 1956, Moolah won a huge 13-woman battle royal, defeating Judy Grable to claim the vacant World Women's Championship. This title had ties to the National Wrestling Alliance World Women's Championship, but her victory wasn't recognized by everyone, especially not Billy Wolfe, who still had a lot of influence in the NWA and hadn't forgotten their falling out. Even so, Vince McMahon, Sr. had big plans for her. He gave her a brand new nickname that would stick for the rest of her life, the Fabulous Moolah. Soon after becoming champion, Moolah had to prove herself against former champ June Byers, who came out of retirement to challenge her. During their match, Moolah was aggressive and dominant, eventually pinning Byers to retain the title. That win was a turning point. It kicked off Moolah's legendary first reign as women's champion, a reign that would stretch on for over 10 years. During that time, Moolah defended her title against all the top women in the business. Names like Judy Grable and Donna Christanello stood across the ring from her, but none could take her down for long. Outside the ring, Moolah also claimed to have made friends with some of the biggest celebrities of the time, including Elvis Presley and Jerry Lee Lewis. She would later talk about those friendships in her autobiography, First Goddess of the Squared Circle. In 1964, when June Byers officially retired, the NWA finally recognized Moolah as the undisputed women's world champion. But even champions lose sometimes, and on September 17, 1966, Moolah dropped the belt to Bette Boucher. It didn't last long, though. Moolah got the title back just a few weeks later. She also went international, trading the championship with Japanese star Yukiko Tomoe during a 1968 tour of Japan. That move showed her reach wasn't just limited to the US. She had fans, rivals, and influence all around the world. Then in 1972, Moolah made history again. On July 1st, she became the first woman allowed to wrestle at the legendary Madison Square Garden. Until then, women had been banned from wrestling in New York State. But thanks in part to Moolah's persistence, that ban was lifted in June of that year. She even made her case on the Mike Douglas show, where she flipped football player Rosie Greer onto his back to prove women could wrestle too. Her reign continued almost uninterrupted until 1976, when she lost the title to Sue Green at Madison Square Garden. But just like before, she won it back shortly afterward and kept going strong. In the late 1970s, Moolah took things a step further. She actually bought the legal rights to the Women's World Championship. That meant she didn't just hold the belt, she owned it. Even when she lost the title to Evelyn Stevens in 1978, it was only for 2 days before she reclaimed it and launched into another 6-year reign. She was more than a champion by then. She was an empire. And she didn't just dominate the singles division. In the 1970s, she teamed up with Toni Rose to win the NWA Women's World Tag Team Championship twice, showing that she could succeed in any division she entered. By the early 1980s, Vince McMahon Jr. was taking over the family business and had big plans for national expansion. He needed strong characters and stories, and women's wrestling was part of that vision. So in 1983, Moolah sold the rights to her Women's World Championship to McMahon's WWF. She also agreed to appear exclusively for the company, officially becoming the first ever WWF Women's Champion. The very next year, wrestling entered pop culture in a big way, thanks to the Rock and Wrestling connection. Pop star Cyndi Lauper and manager Captain Lou Albano were feuding in a storyline that brought a ton of media attention to wrestling. When it was time to settle things in the ring, Albano represented Moolah, while Lauper backed rising star Wendy Richter. That clash happened on July 23, 1984, during a special MTV broadcast called The Brawl to End It All. In the main event, Moolah lost her title to Richter in front of a national audience. The WWF promoted it like Moolah had held the belt for 28 straight years, making Richter's win seem even bigger. But Moolah wasn't finished yet. In early 1985, she helped Leilani Kai beat Richter and take the title. Then at the very first WrestleMania, Richter won it back. However, the relationship between Richter and the WWF soon fell apart. In one of the most infamous moments in wrestling history, Moolah put on a mask and posed as the Spider Lady, tricking Richter in a match and pinning her in a screwjob finish that Richter didn't know was coming. After that betrayal, Richter quit the company for good. Moolah, on the other hand, held on to the title for another 2 years, except for a 6-day loss to Velvet McIntyre in Australia in 1986. She finally lost the championship to Sherry Martel on July 24, 1987. Still, she wasn't quite done. She captained a team at the first ever Survivor Series later that year. Her team, made up of Moolah, Velvet McIntyre, Rockin' Robin, and the Jumping Bomb Angels, defeated Sherry Martel's team in a classic 5-on-5 elimination match. Even after stepping away from the spotlight, Moolah still popped up here and there. On September 3, 1988, she wrestled AWA Women's Champion Medusa Michelli to a double disqualification on an independent show in Medina, Ohio. That match marked one of her final in-ring appearances before she retired from wrestling altogether. Even after stepping away from full-time wrestling, the Fabulous Moolah wasn't ready to leave the spotlight. In 1990, during her retirement years, she helped launch the Ladies International Wrestling Association, or LIWA, based out of North Carolina. It wasn't a massive promotion, but it gave women a place to shine. They even held some shows out in Las Vegas, and Moolah was more than just a promoter. She stayed deeply involved. By 1993, Moolah shocked fans by lacing up her boots again. At the age of 70, she stepped back into the ring and defeated a younger wrestler named Sunny Brook. That comeback wasn't just a one-time thing. On June 21, 1996, Moolah teamed up with her longtime friend Mae Young at a special LIWA event called the Golden Girls Extravaganza in Las Vegas. They faced Liz Chase and Lori Lynn in a match that ended in a no contest, but the moment itself was unforgettable. Moolah and Mae would continue teaming up at LIWA shows, showing that age didn't mean much when you had that much fire left in you. Around this time, Moolah also started appearing again at WWF events throughout the early 90s, popping up in video packages and making special appearances. Then, in 1995, she got one of the highest honors in wrestling. She became the first woman ever inducted into the WWF Hall of Fame. At that point, most thought her wrestling days were officially behind her. But in the late 90s, Pat Patterson, a WWE legend, and Moolah started joking about a possible in-ring return. Patterson even pitched the idea to Vince McMahon, and to everyone's surprise, Moolah and Mae Young returned to WWF television in 1999. The women's division had changed by then. Matches were now often more about entertainment and sex appeal than pure wrestling. But Moolah and Mae leaned into comedy and instantly became fan favorites. On SmackDown, in September 1999, Jeff Jarrett smashed a guitar over Moolah's head. Weeks later, Moolah and Mae beat Ivory in a handicapped evening gown match, setting up a title match at No Mercy. Moolah won and became the oldest women's champion ever at 76. She kept making cameos into her 80s, even beating Victoria in 2003 as a birthday gift. That same night, Randy Orton dropped her with an RKO. Her final WWE moment came at SummerSlam 2007, proving she never truly left the ring behind. And that wraps up today's video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss an update.